The battle dust still lingered in the air, blown by the chilly wind over the Sekigahara plain. Bodies were scattered around the field, a silent reminder of the brutal conflict that had changed the fate of Japan forever. Young Musashi was among the wounded, his right arm pierced by an enemy spear. He had dragged himself through the slaughter, desperately trying to flee that netherworld. The searing pain in his arm was agonizing, but the wound in his pride was even greater. The Western Army's rout, the dissolution of his clan, and the confusion over the fate of his lord Ukita Hide left him lost and bewildered. With the help of peasants he met along the way, Musashi made it to a village where he was given first aid for his wound. But the recovery was slow and painful. With no resources, he depended on the mercy of strangers to survive. Distraught and isolated, Musashi took revenge in a small hut on the village outskirts. Solitude and boredom became his greatest enemies. As his body slowly healed, his mind was tormented by uncertainty and questions. What was he to do now? What was his place in a Tokugawa-dominated Japan? Once the icon of his ambitions for glory, the sword now represented the pain of defeat and the uncertainties of the future. Musashi found himself at a crossroads, not knowing which way to go. But the flame that had been burning in his heart since childhood was not entirely extinguished. Driven by the need to overcome adversity and find a new purpose, Musashi undertook an intense self-improvement period. Over the days and nights of his convalescence, Musashi dedicated his time to working out his body and mind. He practiced breathing and meditation techniques, learnt from his monk uncle, to fortify his spirit and control his consuming rage. Musashi also studied military strategy and philosophy to understand the causes of the Sekigahara defeat and draw lessons from past mistakes. He devoured books on history, war tactics, and wisdom from sages such as Confucius and Lao Tzu, trying to find knowledge and inspiration to shape his future. But the sword continued to call him. Musashi knew that the martial arts were an essential part of his identity, and he had to find a new way to express himself through them. He went on to train relentlessly, experimenting with new techniques and developing his own style, one that was more fluid, intuitive, and suited to different circumstances. He learned how to use his body as a weapon, mixing agility, strength, and accuracy in his movements. He found the importance of timing, observation, and anticipating his opponent's movements. He found that long walks through the Japanese mountains and forests were an essential part of his training. In nature, Musashi found the inner peace and inspiration to connect with his intuition and refined his skills as a samurai. After this wandering and self-improvement period, Musashi was transformed. The physical and emotional Sekigahara scars became reminders of his toughness and determination. He emerged as a more mature warrior, both disciplined and self-aware of his strength. Now honed by suffering and reflection, the sword was ready to be wielded for a new purpose, the drive for technical perfection, and the building of a legacy that would render him immortal. With its majestic temples and peaceful gardens, the ancient capital, Kyoto, was also a vibrant center of culture and martial arts. Several fencing schools, each with their own traditions and techniques, fought for prestige and students, leaving a fertile environment for competition and the pursuit of excellence in swordsmanship. Among these rivalries, one name rang out through the alleys and dojos: Miyamoto Musashi. The 21-year-old wandering samurai had just arrived in the capital, eager to challenge the best swordsman, not only to perfect his art, but also to cement his reputation as an invincible warrior. His primary target was the Yoshioka school, one of Kyoto's most prestigious and influential, led by the master Yoshioka Seijuro, a swordsman famous for his flawless technique and invincible aura. Descended from a lengthy line of samurai instructors and known for his staring practice, a form of meditation that sharpened his focus and perception, Seijuro was the perfect challenge for Musashi, who wanted not only to beat him in combat, but also to surpass the tradition and weight of history represented by the Yoshioka school. Arrogant and defiant, Musashi sent a letter to Seijuro, offering a public duel to compare techniques. The challenge was accepted, and the venue chosen was the field next to the Rendaji Temple on the outskirts of Kyoto. Seijuro, immaculately attired, came to the battlefield on the designated day, escorted by his disciples. He oozed authority and confidence, the outcome of years of training and an awareness of his own mastery. But Musashi was far too late for the duel, and Seijuro kept waiting for him, overwhelmed by impatience and anger. Musashi eventually arrived, carrying his wooden sword and dressed in vulgar clothes, unworthy of a duel of this proportion. He quickly surveyed the terrain and his opponent's behavior. Musashi knew that Seijuro's temper would be his greatest weapon, since he had arrived late on purpose just to upset his opponent. When the duel finally began, the furious Seijuro threw away his bokuto and drew a katana. He wanted to kill the Chiki Ronin. Seijuro charged forward with the strength of a tiger, but Musashi, with cat-like ability, evaded the blow. He had predicted Seijuro's reaction and was going to use the anger his opponent felt as a weapon against him. With a single precise and powerful blow, Musashi hit Seijuro's left shoulder. The impact of the bokken was overwhelming, inflicting a sharp, paralyzing pain in the samurai's arm. Astonished and humiliated, Seijuro fell to the ground, powerless to resume the fight. The unbelieving crowd witnessed the fall of the great master, Yoshioka, before a wandering samurai and a simple wooden bokken. Had he had used his sharp blade, Seijuro would have been dead. Devastated by defeat and unable to use his arm, Seijuro left the Yoshioka school and retired to a Buddhist monastery, looking for a new meaning to his life in isolation and spirituality. The era of Yoshioka Seijuro, the Great Kempo, was over. Musashi's victory spread all over Kyoto, establishing his reputation as a superb duelist. But the fury of the Yoshioka brothers, hungry for revenge, would lead the wandering samurai into a new and perilous battle, testing his limits and carving out the legend that would immortalize him.